today's episode as we talk about what's happening in the world of cybersecurity, ransomware attacks, and cyber defense. Today, we've got a packed lineup. We're going to start with 3 major ransomware attacks rocking U.S. organizations, and then we're going to dive into 3 sophisticated cyber campaigns, from nation-state trickery to a citywide shutdown in Randy's great state of Texas. And finally, unpack a string of high-profile data breaches. Randy and Andre, great to have you guys here this morning.
What's going on?
Get into it.
It was good to see Randy last week in person.
Yeah, Brian, we missed you, man.
Sorry, guys.
We had all kinds of fun, man. We had pizza. We learned a lot.
All you guys had. I saw that little pizza party you had.
Yeah.
A little shindig.
Darn good, too. And a lot of great bourbon. Well, not a lot, but we got to try different.
I would imagine in Louisville, yeah. But does Louisville actually have good pizza?
They do, and you're pronouncing it wrong.
I don't care. I'm from Philly. We fucking talk how we want. At least I don't say wooder.
Yeah, I'm not sure what for water.
Water. Everyone around here says wooder.
That's right? Hilarious.
WOODER. Somehow I've managed to not do that, and I say water. But yeah, my whole entire family says wooder, and
there you go.
Everyone else around here, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just never sunk in with me. And I'm always like, but I know what it is. If you talk to me and you say water, I'm not going to be like, what did you just say? So, all right, guys. So we got a lot going on. We're going to announce this real quick at the top of the show. We'll also mention it throughout the show, maybe at the end, because we want people to be aware. Next week, we are going to start a new podcast on AI. We're super excited about it. 3 of us and our companies have learned a lot around AI in the past 18 months or so, and we feel like there's a lot we can share with you. We don't feel like the rest of the business world is keeping pace, so we feel like it's going to be a valuable resource along with this show. We're not going to stop doing this show. We may cut down the time that we spend. Instead of like 45-hour shows, they'll probably be more like 20 to 30 minutes. So shorter, but more impactful. So that'll give us time to kind of figure out the AI side of things and see where that show takes us in terms of topics and what we do over there. But definitely, I think both the Security Squawk podcast and whatever we call the AI podcast, there's going to be some positive changes that come from both efforts that I think everyone will like. So remember, the comments are open in Facebook and LinkedIn, as well as the chat on YouTube. So if you're watching us live, we'd love to hear from you in those comments. As we dive into the topics for today, which the first one up on the board, guys, we talked about this one last week. It was an early one. But over the weekend of April 12th, DaVita is one of the largest dialysis providers. They discovered a ransomware infection that encrypted their critical network systems despite interim measures to isolate impacted servers. Some operations have remained disrupted at this time, and we're about 2 weeks into it. But somehow patient care continues to be uninterrupted. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But here we go. There's actually 3 different healthcare providers. DaVita is obviously the biggest one, $1 billion. And I'm sure Andre will fill us in on the details of DaVita and the kind of money they rake in. But there's 2 other healthcare entities that are dealing with ransomware attacks this week as well. Just showing you that healthcare providers need to be on the lookout, because these attacks are just infiltrating your industry like crazy. And if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, we're never going to get hit, those are for the other companies. The other companies get hit, not us. Your time's running out. It seems like everybody in the healthcare sector is getting hit these days, guys. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're talking about it every week. It's either going to be a school, a healthcare, government agency, and those big three is because they make the news. No one's going to most likely your local news station or newspaper. They're not going to be knocking on your door if you get hacked because you're just too small, right? You don't make the news, but it's definitely still happening. If these big industry categories are getting hacked, it just means that the small business is probably getting 10 times more.
Right. And we say it every week, Brian, but basically follow the money. And there's a ton of money for the bad guys to make in healthcare. One, we've all seen live and in person, all three of us over the last year, gone to a doctor or a hospital, some kind of healthcare provider, and we see a machine running Windows 7, which has been, discontinued forever and easy for the bad guys to pwn. Or even, I think I saw a Windows XP within the last 2 years.
Well, I mean, look, and you're right, but look, in October, we have Windows 10 going end of life.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to see Windows 10 for
everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. And then on top of that, the data that they can get for patient data, especially because of the way we do billing in America. You go to the hospital, you don't just get a hospital bill. You get a hospital bill plus like 9 other people, who looked at you or whatever. And the complexity there with the billing makes people an easy target when their information gets leaked on the dark web for the bad guys to pick it up and get these people to pay a bill. Send everybody a $45 x-ray bill, right? They're probably going to pay it because they see all these bills anyway. How many times do we call? We get 9 bills from the doctor and we actually call the doctor and verify, hey, are these real? I mean, most people just pay them. So yeah, I think this is going to continue, Brian, until the healthcare industry gets serious. They've already got more serious, I guess. They've already got laws backing all this up. But it's going to continue.
Yeah. Yep. And unfortunately, it's only going to, when they're legally liable for a life, that's unfortunately when they're really going to have to then start to take action when there's like a death or something like that. And that's how usually things are.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think it was also announced, and I don't really have it in my notes here, but the Interlock is the ransomware group that has claimed responsibility for the ransomware attack on DaVita. And they did release, I don't know if it was all, but they did release some files on their dark web leak site in the last 24 hours. So we saw how that played out with a lot of healthcare organizations when people's medical records end up on the dark web. It costs them a lot of money when it comes to these class action lawsuits and the things that come behind when these types of events happen. And I got to believe, guys, we've been talking about this for a while now. We've pondered, what is this strategy behind these ransomware groups releasing this data into the dark web like this? And I'm going to tell you what I think it is. If you can show, and that's kind of been the earmark of these ransomware groups, right? They didn't just get the reputation of, hey, if you pay the ransom, you'll get your data back. That didn't just happen after the first ransomware attack. It was over time, over a series of ransomware attacks where kind of whisper down the lane happened between business leaders and business owners. Hey, look, we paid and we got all our data back, right? And then people started paying the ransom. And that's why paying the ransom became a thing, right? So now we see a shift. We see cyber criminals now taking data and then going through this negotiation process with businesses and then eventually releasing it on the dark web, right? And they can do it one of 2 ways. They can either try to auction it off first to the highest bidder, or they just dump it out there for free for everybody to just, grab and do whatever they want with. And either way, the fallout of that is businesses have to deal with attorneys, lawyers, class action lawsuits, and they pay through the nose as a result. Lehigh Valley Health Network, I think, paid 60 times what these ransomware criminals were asking for when it was all said and done, when they had to pay, settle on these class action lawsuits that came their way when people's medical records ended up on the dark web. So how many times do you think this is going to happen before everybody picks their head up out of the sand and goes, look what's happening? We're getting nailed with all of these class action lawsuits, and we're paying all this out on the back end because we're deciding not to negotiate with these guys, and we're saying we don't care if this stuff ends up on the dark web. It's not going to be very long before businesses stop this and they pivot and they go, well, wait a minute, right? Maybe we should talk to these guys about not releasing our data, right? And I'm not saying any of this is right or is how it should be, or that we should even be negotiating with these guys. But this is the predicament that you put yourself in when you don't put the right protections in place and you don't invest enough in cybersecurity. You're forced to have these conversations. And that's just the end of it. Like, there's only going to be so many more attacks where companies' data is stolen, ends up on the dark web. They end up paying tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in settlement fees before these businesses turn around, or these insurance companies turn around and change their tune about how they're handling these situations. Because I think right now they're handling them all wrong.
Yeah, and you're just continuing to fund the cybercrime. I know most of us, we always say, don't pay it, but in reality, it actually makes more sense to pay it.
We don't know. You don't know the situation. The particulars of every situation is different, right? But if you're talking about medical records, and in those medical records is very sensitive information, you're making a more calculated risk if you're deciding just not to negotiate because of a ransomware payment. It's not about the ransomware payment anymore. Right. And a lot of times that's, I think, what these breach attorneys are coming in, and it's kind of like the breach attorney is not keeping up with what's going on out there. They're giving old school advice that worked 6-12 months ago. It's not working today. They need to change what they're doing, unfortunately. So that's where it's at. And Randy, I know I skipped. I went to the wrong article. I apologize. I started off with the DaVita one. I got a little excited. But the big one, the big story for today on the Cybersecurity podcast is the cyber attack. And you didn't even tell me that I didn't even pull up the article, Randy.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
My gosh.
Well, Andre and I don't know if you're going to read the chat or not. So a lot of times in there we make fun of you or something, or
I know
try to troll you, and you don't look, and sometimes you do. So
I know.
All right, so we're talking about Texas, right?
We are going to talk about Texas. So this is Abilene, Texas.
And this article is actually misleading because there's literally a city in Texas called Texas City, which is a petroleum headquarters of the world, basically, right? At least of Texas. So you shouldn't
be allowed to do that. You shouldn't be allowed to name a city after the state.
Well, I think there's a Texas, Pennsylvania, so or Houston, Pennsylvania.
But there isn't a Pennsylvania city.
Yeah, something like that. So anyway.
All right, so we got this city of Abilene. Where is Abilene, Randy?
So Abilene is kind of northwest of Austin. It's its own thing.
There's a college there, right?
There's several colleges there. It is probably the Christian capital of college capital of the world. I think there's 3 that are there.
Is that where Texas Christian is? TCU?
No, that's in Fort Worth.
Okay.
But it's Abilene Christian.
Okay.
I think Hardin Simmons is there. I can't remember the third one, but I'm pretty sure there's 3 that are there. So it's a college town, and it's it's like 130,000 people, but it's its own thing. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. Unless you live there, then it's not.
But it's not like there's a pretty decent population there. It's not like it's like West Texas, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's a full-on town. You got your
there's a tumbleweed rolling through town.
Yeah. You got your Walmarts,
All right, so they had multiple core systems go dark after an April 18th intrusion, and this has forced staff to revert to pen and paper to serve residents. From my understanding, 911 and emergency services have not been impacted, but your typical other, city services have. So, what's going on here, and what unique hurdles is Abilene going to have to, deal with as they go through this sudden event?
Well, there's not a lot of news out right now about this, or a lot of detail about this. But what we've seen, I don't know this about Abilene, but what we've seen, Andre already mentioned it. We hear about government getting hit every single week. We don't know if they had anything in place. Were they just relying on an IT guy or IT person who has been trying as hard as they can over the past 10 years to keep up with this, with a limited amount of budget and not a lot of responsiveness from other people, kind of living on an island on their own. We don't know what's going on here. Were they fully cyber secure before, and this is one of those attacks you just can't prevent? Or were they running like antivirus on all their machines, and somebody clicked on an email and then now they have ransomware? My gut tells me it's probably they were underprepared.
Yeah. They did mention that they did immediate activation of their incident response plan. So that shows something. And some parts of the government are working. The water department is working. They're saying that emergency service is working. So that's good because we've seen, for example, with I believe the Indian tribes, where when they got hit, every single department was just basically offline.
Right.
So this just talks about why it's so important to have that incident response plan, why it's so important to be able to, still make sure that your emergency systems work. So, you segment your networks into different departments and things like that. For example, your police department should be separate from everything. So, they can still operate and things like that. And this also just shows that, they're still going. What was the date? April 18, I think. So here we are in the 25th, and they're still going through that process. So it does take time. And again, this is why IT should not be looked at as just a expense, but this will literally take down your business if something happens, and it needs to be looked and seen that way.
Yes, sir. You have to invest in cybersecurity 100% because these guys are just getting really good. And not only that, the stuff I'm seeing out there, it's part of the reason why we're doing the AI podcast is, these cyber criminals are using AI to their advantage.
Yeah, they are.
And it's just I just want people to understand this, and it's going to make their job a lot easier. Yep. From everything from social engineering to finding vulnerabilities to exploit on your network so they can successfully deploy ransomware. It's only going to increase their odds of being successful. 100%. So.
Yeah, that's totally right, man.
I got it. Hold on, guys. I'm getting ad blocked here by Reuters. Let me clear this up real quick, and then I'll pull up the next article.
Well, while you're saying that, we do talk about how AI can save money, increase profits. One thing it's not going to really do is give us more time. So we're not going to use AI, then everybody go to a 30-hour work week or something like that. It's just going to make us more productive in the 40 hours or 50 hours or whatever that we're at work.
You're at work for 50 hours?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
80 hours.
You need a new job, or you need to talk to your boss.
Exactly.
All right. So here we go. What are we talking about here? The FBI, right? FBI complaints about ransomware attacks on U.S. infrastructure rose 9%, and FBI says, right? And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. These things are just going to increase. This ain't slowing down. 9% might not seem like a lot, but if you knew how much this particular sector was actually being targeted, 9% is enough. They don't need any more. The fact that it's going up is a problem. So their ransomware attacks on U.S. infrastructure doesn't show any signs of relenting, as in a recent FBI report that was just released that had a ton of data in it. And I highly recommend that you go download and read the latest FBI report on what happened in 2024. But FBI data revealed that a 9% jump in the attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure last year was a big deal. And then healthcare and manufacturing, you had an even bigger jump. So should be no surprise if you watch this podcast. We talk about those two industries all the time. And, what does this trend, guys, tell us about attackers and shifting targets? Like why do they like to go after particular sectors over another? What is the reason?
Well, A, high target value. B, they most likely have some type of insurance and they're going to be able to pay. And I would say 3 is the urgency to get back to work. This is not just some small plumbing company that if you take them down, the plumber can still get his tools and get his guys out on the field. If your infrastructure, if you're medical, if you're school, you're going to have a lot of people knocking on your doors, pissed off that they can't, do the business that they're there for.
Yeah. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, every business can tolerate a different level of being down, right? Certain businesses can't be down for an hour without customers and clients noticing, where others can be down for maybe a week and nobody would really notice.
Right. And like I already said in the show, and we say it every show, it really boils down to the money. Where can they make the most money? Now, you do have some attacks that are like what we would call nation state. And there is a geopolitical reasoning behind the attacks. But the majority of these, it's about the money. And like Andre said, there's an urgency. If a city goes down, they can't stay down. I mean, because that's what the government, they're running as a government. They have to get back up. So there's going to be an urgency. If there's an urgency behind it, they're more likely to pay a ransom, and or the criminals are more likely to get money out of the situation.
And it also talked about, we don't talk about it too often, but cryptocurrency, it went up 66% in frauds. About $9 billion people have lost in some type of cryptocurrency fraud. And once that's gone, you can't call your bank and dispute or charge back or anything like that. It is out.
Yeah, dude, one thing that cyber criminals do now, for sure, what we see is before they do things like deploy ransomware, and we've talked about this for a long time. We've talked about like they look around for stuff. They'll look for things like your contracts, who you're doing business with. Maybe they stumble upon your cyber insurance policy because you have it, digitally stored on your system somewhere, and they kind of know how much coverage you have, and they're very good at using that information to negotiate a ransom payment. And it's no different here. They're also scouring your systems for things like crypto wallet keys and stuff like that. They're looking for easy ways to find stuff on your systems to move cryptocurrency, because if they can get your wallet key, they can move your crypto. And, they do look for that stuff before they do things like deploy ransomware. They look for ways to rip you off, scam you, and make money, because the ransomware to them is the death punch. It's the last thing they're ever going to do, right? Because as soon as it's done, they're out. They're outed. They're now announcing that they're in your network and they have you pawned, right? So that is the last thing that these guys are doing when they realize, okay, there's nothing here for us, so let's hit them with ransomware. And that's how it works. The FBI has reported in the same report, guys, that there's that the U.S. alone lost $16.6 billion to cybercrime in 2024. Lost, gone to a foreign actor, foreign criminal, and we're cool with this. Well, we're not cool with this, but the rest of the 300 other million people in the country seem to not care so much, or at least maybe 290 million of them.
Yeah, it's just not tangible, and it's because it's segmented to each person, each company. It's not just like it hitting one bit. I hate to say the analogy of 9/11, but it's not like something like that where it's just like, oh, woo. It's just like hitting in each different department, segment, category, government, small businesses. So the pain is a little less for us to absorb.
And this is going to be just probably, the way I understand this is just cash, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's crypto.
Right.
No, it's probably going. This statistic does not. This number does not include like things like downtime and recovery costs.
Exactly. That's my
Right.
my point. This is not total loss of business.
Nope.
Which is
this
probably
is just like what was paid in ransom and things like that.
Yep.
And if I look at some statistics, I'll just bring it up. Let me switch to this tab. So there you go. How much was spent on cybersecurity in 2023? $11.28 billion in 2023.
It went down?
Went down. In 2022.
Why?
AI, for sure. People spending more money on AI. That's my guess.
Well, I would guess that in the 19 was probably the 19 billion was probably,
COVID money.
Something around that would be, yeah.
Looks like it goes up and down. So 2020 was almost 19 billion. 2021 was a little over 8.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where Google's pulling these numbers from. I think this Statista site, but which is U.S. government estimated spending. When you're spending on your protections around the same amount as what you're paying out to cyber criminals, that's my point. That's the problem. Like you're literally spending the same amount on protections as you're paying out cyber criminals.
Oh.
When that shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
You should be paying the cyber defenders, not paying. So if you just spent essentially double what you're spending, every business in the United States doubled their spending on cybersecurity, we probably wouldn't even need this show because we wouldn't have much to talk about.
Huh.
It's just we choose to make dumb decisions and then we pay for it in the long run, right?
Right.
So, all right, guys, here we go.
Yeah, I could also just see that I could see the business owner where, okay, yeah, he spent the money and then just decided, you know what, we're going to just scale it. I mean, I've had that conversation with my clients, right?
Yep.
Hey, business is going a little slow and, I
Yep.
know I paid this, but I need to scale it down or I got to find somebody else and we got to work with them based on their budget. But that's crazy.
I don't like rooters. I don't know why we keep bringing them up because they give me this give feedback thing all the time. Go away.
Well, if you give feedback,
I can't get it to go away.
Well,
so anyway, it says U.S. firms do crypto developers. Interesting article here. Wow. Okay. So North Korean cyber criminals, spies, they're being called, created a U.S. firm to dupe crypto developers. This Lazarus group, which is a North Korean government-backed hacking group, they uncovered that these operatives spun up 2 fake U.S. companies, one called Block Novus LLC and SoftGlide LLC, to trick crypto developers into installing malware. So here we go, guys. What's not the first time we've seen something like this. So what's happening here?
Yeah, so we're seeing nation states like North Korea. They're basically creating LLCs in the United States. That way, you can go on your state website and you'll see their legit business, legit website, and they're pretending to hire developers. And the whole idea is to now get them into trying to get some blockchain. And just going back to that other article we talked about of how they're trying to steal the blockchain. And the goal is that this is how they get their cash to build their nuclear weapons and all of the stuff that they're doing over there. So it's a big scam.
And this is just honestly, this is looking at it from a wide out historical view. This is just part of the cat and mouse game, because over the past year or so, we've seen Korean spies actually posing as potential employees on Indeed and places like that, and getting actually hired and going in and working at sensitive, in sensitive areas as developers. Well, that got found out and everybody talked about it, so now people are, I guess they're getting on a Zoom call and verifying things about people a little more diligently. And so this is just, to me, is just the next step in the cat and mouse game. Like, okay, well, they're not going to hire us on Indeed. Let's just straight up set up corporations, see what we can do there, and like Andre said, the whole point's to funnel money into North Korea to pay for their dirty deeds.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is where the money will end up, and it's just a bigger discussion around when I was thinking of a company that we met with earlier in the week, and one of the things that came up was the fact that they got hacked at some point, and I was able to quickly identify, in my conversations with them, which was maybe 15 minutes, that they didn't have anything, they don't have any policies in place. They don't have any structure around how they do their IT. They just have a guy that just does stuff, and part of the reason they got ransomware, they got hit, was because they failed to have something that's known as an approved software list, right? They just let people install whatever they want. Right. And that's what will happen here with your crypto developers in this case. There's no protocol for evaluating software that's downloaded off the internet. And it's very common for developers to find tools on the internet and not really vet them like they should, because they think it'll help them develop code faster or whatever. And then boom, it's malware. So it becomes really ugly really fast. And this is why things like having structure in your IT and making sure that you have things like approved software lists and you don't allow people just to install whatever they want on their systems is a very good way to prevent things like this from happening to your systems, which these things that we're talking about right here, with these groups developing malware that looks like legitimate software that you download either through an app store or off the internet. This is very, very common, right, guys? This isn't like you might get hit with this. Think about all the Chrome extensions that are built the same way with malware and to steal people's stuff, right? This stuff is so common that I would venture to say that it's probably on 50 to 60% of the computers out there, and people don't even know it.
Wow.
So we don't have time to cover everything, guys. Is there anything you want to get to particularly where I just run down the list here?
Real quick on the next one with the cyber warfare in countries.
Yeah. Okay. Let me pull that one up. Give me 1 second.
And the biggest thing I like about, well, not that I like, but the more interesting thing about this one is how it's talking about how countries like China, Russia, and North Korea, they're actually partnering together. So it's not, one thing, to say is okay, China's coming after us, but all three countries are kind of now coming up together to see, okay, how can we, scam, sabotage, steal from these U.S. businesses? And they're trading ideas. They're training, for example, North Korea may say, hey, I have this expert. China says, I have this expert. And then they're cross-training each other and things like that. So we're really not just going after some 17-year-old trying to hack your system. I mean, you have literally teams of countries trying to come after our businesses.
Yeah, and when the new president was elected, started talking with Putin, we talked about it on the show, where we on our side stopped attacking offensively Russia I assume to help with, negotiations or whatever. I think for a lot of people out there in the world, that was an eye opener. Like, wow, like we've been attacking other countries. There's a lot of this is going on back and forth around the world, and it is just becoming more and more of a reality. We first started talking about it a lot on our show when the war in Ukraine broke out, because we saw nation state attacking behind the scenes went up overnight, So I just think this is part of our new reality, and countries can't afford to just sit there and hope for the best. Just like businesses, we live in a connected world on a network that wasn't really built with security in mind from the get-go. And so now we've got to make sure that we're acting securely on this giant network. So,
yes, sir. Good way to put it. Good way to put it. All right. So I got a couple more minutes here, so we're good. So we'll go to this Legends International one, guys. Let me pull that one up real quick on the screen, and we'll jump into it. So we got this Legends International. They're a force behind stadium experiences for the NFL, NBA, and more, confirmed a 2024 November breach exposing employee files and visitor records, prompting identity theft protection offers. So here we go. Interesting, right? Because I think you can file this under one of those companies that probably thought to themselves, it'll never happen to us. Like, why would anyone want to attack a business that, all we do is set up stages for, the NFL, stuff like that, right? So, wow, my computer's like going nuts right now. I'm gonna. So here we go. So, any other insight on this other than?
Yeah, the fact that they had to, they're offering 2 years of identity monitoring. So that's a suggestion that there's some type of social, driver license, financial information, because, again, obviously it says sensitive data. So I would imagine you got to do deposits for these type of things. People have to put, they need like information. Hey, in order for us to do this business, we need the ACH information. And most likely this is a stage company that started with a guy who knows how to do stages, and he was able to then build his business. So he may not have the insight as far as like, how do we make sure that we protect the business side of the IT?
Yes. And we say it a lot also, Brian, but on a personal level, because this is data, most of this data breach has to do with people individually. And I would say on a personal level, it's huge important that you lock down you freeze your credit reports, because that's one of the things they'll try to do with some of this. That's just one of the things you need to do.
Okay, so I'm just going to call a spade here based on what I'm reading. And I want to make people aware of something. There's one thing that I'm very good at observing is the trends that happen as a result of these data breaches and these cyber attacks. And I'm able to spot trends, and it's easy to spot trends, I think, because I think it's the same attorneys involved in all these attacks, or they're working for the same firms, and maybe 2 or 3 firms are working off the same kind of playbook, right? Because they all kind of change at the same time, and they all kind of start doing things the same way, and they start responding to these events in very similar patterns, and you can see the missteps that they're making. And what I mean by missteps is they start doing things, and a lot of times the cyber criminals are already adapting, and these lawyers are so behind what's going on that it almost becomes like, it almost looks like they don't know what they're doing at times. So why I say that is because this whole letter that came out where it says, the letter does not discuss this, and this is what I mean by I'm seeing this language all the time now when it comes to these data breaches. And why I'm making a big deal about it is because they're saying in a lot of them, as this one does, it doesn't discuss the nature of the data stolen. They know the nature of the data stolen. Like, let's be real here. So we don't know if it's the usual names, email addresses, postal addresses, or if it includes more sensitive information like payment data, driver's license numbers, social security numbers, etc. That is like the standard language that is coming out after every data breach now. And it's almost insulting for some people because they'll get these letters, right? And this happened to a friend of mine who got one of these letters in the mail. And it said the same exact thing, but it also had pictures of his actual medical records that were on the dark web. Oh. And at the top right-hand corner was his name, his address, and his social security number. But at the top of the letter, it said exactly this. We're not sure if it includes that stuff.
Wow.
But here it is.
But it's right, like, they're not sure, but clearly. So what does that tell you, right? It tells you that they don't have the technology to scan through these images to see if there's PII embedded in the images. So this is what they're doing. Instead of taking the time to figure it out for people, they're just like, we're not going to figure it out. We'll just send them the information and just send them this blanket statement that covers our ass.
And move on.
And move on. And get them pay for this for a year and hope we don't hear from them again.
And sit back and wait for the lawsuits, right?
Right. And that's what happens. So the class action lawsuits start to roll in because then these people are like, either I'm getting scammed or heck no, like my social security number is right here and they're smart enough to go hire an attorney. Where other people will just throw that in the trash.
Yep.
So that's the world we live in today.
Hey, I just
Blue Shield or AI?
No, I just Googled Legends class action lawsuit, and 22 hours ago there was an article that says one of their workers are suing already.
Oh, 100%. Well, not only that, dude, they got a problem, and I didn't even talk about that. They got a problem with how long it took them to notify everybody.
Right.
This happened in 2024, and they're just notifying everybody now.
Yeah,
and
5+.
That's not going to play out well in their class action lawsuits.
Yep.
Yeah. Another one, classactionu.org, Legends International. Sign up to be part of the class action lawsuit. It's already there.
So we'll blow through these pretty quickly because I got to run here in 4 minutes. But wow, just right on. The news just keeps, the hits keep on going here with these data breaches and how much information's out there. 4.7 million from a stark privacy lapse, as it's being called, at Blue Shield of California, who inadvertently shared protected health information for 4.7 million members with Google's ad analytics service. Now, we are going into an AI podcast next week, so stay tuned for more information on that. But I'm just going to caveat, and I'll let Randy take over here in a second. But yeah, these idiots dumped some information into Google Ads analytics service to maybe they didn't realize what they were dumping, or they dumped too many fields and they should have scrubbed it a little bit better. But guys, this is going to happen with AI too. People are going to dump stuff into AI just like they're dumping stuff into Google Ads. And this is a problem that businesses are going to have to deal with. Right. And if you think Blue Shield of California is not going to pay dearly for this data breach, they will. Randy?
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you already nailed it, man. We're going to see more and more of this. We've already seen it as we're doing risk assessments for companies, seeing their data pop up all over the world, basically, because you got a user, who's using one thing and uploading a document like ChatGPT, or they're using a different search engine. Yes, sir.
So I just want to kind of. So we just did a CMMC assessment for a company, right? And it doesn't matter what kind of assessment it is, right? It could be any assessment.
Yes.
Right? And we do an analysis. And we run an analysis, and then we come back with findings, right? And sometimes we're dealing with IT companies and IT departments and the people who constructed those networks and built those networks. When we come at them and tell them, hey, we found all these problems, they don't really take that information too lightly at first.
Right.
It takes a really evolved and well-rounded person, which, there aren't a lot of IT people who fit that bill. So a lot of times you're dealing with adversity, or you're dealing with a defensive individual on the other side for a period of time until you can walk them off the ledge and understand that you're just there to help them. You're not there to throw them under the bus.
Right.
That being said, when you tell these people bad information, you got to deal with that human aspect of it. But at the end of the day, when you see something where you can make a determination, right? And right here, I can make a determination that Blue Shield of California is not only violating HIPAA, but they don't have very good cybersecurity practices in place, right? Based on what I'm seeing right here. So if I run a assessment tool that essentially simulates what a hacker is going to do, and I get information back that's similar to this, it says like, hey, this is set up this way, or there's users that haven't logged into the system that are still active, but they haven't logged in over 2 years, right? Well, that tells me you're not doing a real good job of, maintaining your security, because there's a stale account over here that somebody could use to log into your network that's nobody's touched for 2 years. That shows me a little bit about your cybersecurity practices, allows me to make determinations. So why does a marketing person have access to protected health information when they're trying to run Google ads?
Right.
Well,
that's failure to have separation of duties and to control access to your private health information. If a marketing person can download that and use it in a CSV file, because, dude, we know how this works. You have to download it to a CSV. You have to put it in Google's format to upload it there to try to find an audience. And you have PHI in that. How did they get the PHI in the first place? Because they shouldn't have access to it.
Yep.
And this is one of when we do our episode, this has got to be one of the topics, because now we can put this in there saying you don't have to get hacked to have a data breach.
No.
Right.
No, it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah. What tools are your
users could, like, that's a big thing with CMMC and the DoD. They don't want, because it's happened, they don't want DoD contractors publishing controlled unclassified information on like web servers and stuff. But it's happened in the past. So they actually have to say it. They have to say, like, you can't put this stuff out there on a publicly accessible website. Right. And you would think that's like common sense, but they make a big deal about it because it happens all the time, because people just don't realize. Right. This marketing person didn't realize she had PHI in here. She just probably downloaded a CSV from their database and was like, all right, great. It has the name, the address, and the email. And it had all this other information too, but they didn't care about that. And whoop, right up to Google.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow, some way, somebody found out, and now it's in the public.
Right.
I'm kind of curious as to how that happened. So,
wow.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So we didn't touch on a couple of things. We didn't touch on how companies are using AI for cybersecurity. So we'll have to get to that one. And we'll dive into the Verizon data breach report next week as well. And other than that, we just had a quick couple updates on rich technology giant Sensata and their ransomware attack, and then the fallout from the Frederick Health data breach, which was at Frederick Hospital in Maryland. We had 2 updates on that we're not going to have time to get to, guys. So we'll touch on those maybe in the next podcast. And then Luke, just because you're a super fan of the show, mentioned that there's a big cyber attack over in the UK, which I did see. It's M&S. And it's impacting one of the biggest supermarkets. It is a ransomware attack. He says it looks like a ransomware attack. It is a ransomware attack. they've taken their payment platform offline, so they can't even conduct transactions at this point. Probably can do cash, but that's going to make a big impact over across the pond in the UK.
Yep.
When people show up to the grocery store and they cannot buy food. So we will keep everyone updated on those things, and we'll see how that, if that one gets worse, we will definitely cover it in a future episode. But again, stay on the lookout for our new AI podcast starting next week, along with Security Squawk. We appreciate everyone's support, and we'll see everybody next week. Stay safe out there.
Bye, everybody.